Is New Zealand really going to force boards to hire women? Let's have a look. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Heise Says, and especially a welcome to my new subscribers. Everyone, I'd like to talk about a recent article I discovered, where New Zealand may force private companies to pick women directors. So New Zealand's government is prepared to force private businesses to appoint more women directors if companies don't make significant progress themselves. The Minister for Women, Julie Gunter, says. The government said last week that will ensure half of all directors on state sector boards and committees are women by 2021, compared to 46% by the end of 2017. So, by having this arbitrary goal that they want to meet a gender quota, they're going to pick people based on their gender. Or that's going to influence it. I don't care what you say. That's moving away from a merit-based society. That's going to a society where your gender will affect the opportunities that you have. By comparison, women held just 19% of directorships across the 159 companies listed on the main boards of the New Zealand Stock Exchange, according to a report in January. So we see here in the government sector, or the public sector, it's 46%. In the real world, it's 19%. I just heard recently that in Sweden, apparently, in the public sector, 75% of women work for the public sector, and the private sector, 75% of them work there. The working in the public sector is not the same as working in the private sector. It's very different. The environment is different. The work expectations are different. And the way you earn money or bring money is different. It's not the real world. It doesn't have the same challenges or opportunities. So that's why they can afford to do this stupid bullshit. Why they can have arbitrary gender-based decisions, why they can make political decisions based on hiring people just to make them feel good, to be honest. So let's have a look. We're awaiting the next report, and I'm keen to see where they can go. Gunter told Television News New Zealand's Q&A program on Sunday. If they're not making any progress, referring to those businesses, if it's going to sit there at 19%, then we might have to start thinking about ways government can incentivize them. So this is members of parliament in New Zealand threatening to use force or incentives to push private sector to make employment decisions at the most senior level based on gender. To me, this is just disturbing and really, really unfair. Really unfair. And what's quite frustrating is that the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, who's my age, is pushing for this. So you have a female millennial leader who's pushing for these type of ideological based decisions. But I guess that's part of her whole brand. That's what she's all pushing. She's actually on maternity leave at the moment. So under the Prime Minister, the world's youngest female leader, the government is forging ahead with plans to change the way women are treated in society and allow them to achieve their full potential, including an ambitious goal to eliminate the gender pay gap. Don't people realize that this isn't, and I'm going to show you a blog post from one of these, another advocacy group or club I've discovered where there's CEOs coming together. If you haven't seen my video I did on CEOs Against Men, I'll link to it at the end of this video. I know it's a long one, guys. Watch it while you're driving the car, but it's just disturbing seeing these people that are essentially, they're upper class people, okay? They've got a level of wealth, money, and financial independence that they don't have to deal with any of the real problems most of the proles and working people have to deal with. You know, just struggling to make ends meet, or, you know, buying a bloody house these days is insane. They don't need to worry about that. They've already reached these upper levels, so they can just play with changing policy and feeling good and feel like they've made a difference. Well, we all know the gender pay gap. It's a earnings gap, and it doesn't exist in the way that feminists are arguing for. That's fact. That is a fact. It's based on evidence. It's based on understanding of simple statistics. Any high school student could figure it out. Oh. Gunter said a range of tools are potentially available to the government to incentivize private businesses to change, including imposing quotas. Imposing quotas. Wow, that doesn't sound like something you'd have coming out of a Soviet-era factory. You haven't met your quotas today, comrade. We'll line you up and shoot you. What will they do if you don't meet the quotas? What will they do? How will they punish these businesses? That will be interesting to see. And will that affect the profitability of these businesses? Do shareholders, if you're a shareholder in one of these businesses, a large business in New Zealand, do you want the government meddling in the management of where you've invested your money? The evidence is mixed on how successful that is. She says, yeah, well, yeah, whenever anyone ever says evidence is mixed, that's just bloody political weasel talk for saying, yeah, it's bullshit. Quotas in some places have been successful. I'd love to see evidence for that. Right now, there's lawsuits happening in the United States because they are actually discriminating against certain groups to achieve quotas. So they haven't been quite successful. But they can also have perverse consequences. Oh, fantastic. So what I'd like to say is let's start by putting up the challenge. I really hope New Zealand gets rid of this left-leaning government really quick. In Australia, voluntary targets rather than quotas have been in place, but there's been some pushback against them. Well, yes, because it's unfair. It's irrelevant to your ability to work in a role. The chairman of 30% Club Australia, the lobby group pushing for 30% female representation on the board of the nation's largest 200 companies, Nicola Wakefield Evans, says parity should be the ultimate goal. Why? Why should it be the ultimate goal? Okay, do you want to live in a socialist, a communist utopia where everyone is equal? We're all lining up equally for the breadlines, where we all get equality in outcome based on this arbitrary identity, this group identity. You're just picking gender for now. Okay, what happens if that changes? What happens? Okay, we've got our board. Oh, why don't we have any homosexual communist Aboriginals on the board? Or where's your disabled representation? Oh, what about the white guys with beards who watch Saga of Picard and are bald? Why aren't they on the board? It's just, to most rational people, this whole premise of identifying in these groups and using that to make employment decisions or merit-based decisions is just insane. It's just another form of discrimination. That's all it is. And they think they're the good guys. Women currently make up 27.7% of board positions, according to the Australian Institute of Company Directors, which works with the 30% Club to achieve greater gender diversity on board. What about class diversity? What about class diversity? How many of the people on the boards are from private schools and well-to-do families compared to not? There's another one for you. Go on, change that. You saw in this CEO video I did, there's very few Australian accents there in the CEOs of these large organisations. But Mr. Wakefield Evans, who sits on several company boards, including as the non-executive director of the Macquarie Group, has said that even when ASX hits 30%, the gender diversity campaign conversation should not stop. See, there you go. They're just pushing for more. They want complete. I wonder once they hit 50% if they'll go for more, because right now at university, there are more female graduates than male graduates. Sure, a lot of them are picking stupid degrees, like gender studies and arts that really, I would argue, should not be offered to people as an undergraduate, should be offered as a postgraduate after you've had 10 years of work experience. Because, I mean, you've got to realize this is tax money subsidizing the cost of these degrees. And if there's, what are the chances of someone with a gender studies degree actually paying it back? I'd love to see, paying it back in revenue for our civilization. Because maybe we should put a quota on those type of subsidized places, let them pay full fee. But that's a complete separate argument. The next target for these companies should be 40% by 2022. Yada yada yada. Okay, so let's have a look at Club 30%, another organization. We'll just transition there. So this is another group that, there seem to be a few of these where they get you to sign up and to associate with the group, and then they use that to leverage and pretty much guilt you or to get you to publicly commit to achieving an arbitrary quota, and that's their success if they do that. So the 30% Club launched in Australia in May 2015 with the primary objective of campaigning for 30% women on ASIC boards by the end of 2018. Okay, so end of this year. Sorry, I had to check the date. I thought it was 2019. I'm all over the place. Patricia Cross is the country leader and is working closely with the steering committee, our ambassador chairs, yada yada yada. So these are the members of it. We can see here all these CEOs or senior people working with all these different organizations that have agreed to do this. So they've publicly declared it. And once you do that, it becomes part of your identity. So it's much harder for you to countermand it or go against it. And if you want to get a feel for just the vibe and frankly, the arrogance of a lot of the people at this level, watch that clip in the CEOs Against Men, because they're saying, oh, we should listen to the objections. And one I really like is the CEO of ANZ is going, I don't need to go to town hall. I don't need to tell people, why I'm doing this. It doesn't really matter. He's quite adamant, quite arrogant, but then the Royal Commission are finding that they're completely, kicking farmers out of their houses because they've been paying for years. They're completely heartless and don't give a shit about the little people. Banks and these big organizations, they're not your friends. This is just all, look at them all. I wonder how many of these people, if they grew up here in Australia, if they went through the Whitlam days of education, they didn't have to pay anything for their university, it was all paid for by the taxman, debt that will be paid by future generations, including mine. How many of them have gotten housing a lot cheaper, got all these benefits and perks. Their super is huge. Not that any of them would need to get the pensions, but these things were available for their family members at least. But yeah, so it seems a little unfair that they're plugging the opportunities of the next generation artificially. They're moving away from a merit-based society to one that isn't merit-based society. Let's have a look at some of the, they've got all the steering committees and the groups. It's just the typical type of organization, similar to another one. But one thing I found was, we'll have a look at their business brochure and what they're doing. So that's their goal. They want to get to 30%. And I can't find anywhere where everyone says diversity or having more females on boards is a benefit. I cannot find any evidence that having this type of diversity is a benefit. Normally you want the opposite of diversity. You want uniformity of mission, and you want people that are working together. You don't want people pulling at different paths. And your gender, really, I'm shocked. I don't understand how people think that can make any difference. We've seen there's examples in the public service where people are artificially, or they're biased towards women. Once you have blind recruitment, then it's merit-based, that bias disappears. When you don't have the blind recruitment, there's a bias there. So maybe that should be what we advocate for as people that are frustrated with this type of stuff. I'd say let's just have blind recruitment at these levels. Let's remove gender as an issue. Because it's illegal to discriminate based on gender in Australia at the moment. So I thought I'd have a look at their blog and see some of the things, millennials in the workforce, honing your elevator pitch, 17 TED Talks, but what to do with the gender pay gap. And so we'll jump to their blog here. And you can see this is, well, I'll just read you the first paragraphs here because it's just fascinating. The deadline scramble has passed. The results are mostly in, and the result is, as plenty suspected, 8 in 10 UK companies pay men more than women. And there is significant industrial bias in median pay gaps in construction and finance industry. This is referring to a report that was commissioned in the UK. Most companies dispute that their pay gap is driven by bias and instead point to underrepresentation in senior roles, attributed to expert skill polarizations, and the example here is pilots at Ryanair are paid more than female cabin staff, or niche product understandings. Harvey Nichols' average pay is nearly 10% higher for women. Okay, so they're stating a sensible argument for why there is this disparity in the pays between men and women, why this pay gap exists. And my understanding is that is accepted wisdom, but they just ignore it in this article here. Whilst this year's Gender Pay Gap Review has done a fantastic job of sparking a national debate on a topic that needs exposure, most businesses have yet to produce a meaningful action plan to remedy the differential. Because they don't see an issue with the differential, because the differential is the result of, I'm jumping to the wrong thing, the result of these things here. They just ignore it. So, this is just another organization that's pushing for political purposes. Guys, I think really to address all of this, we need to advocate for more of a blind recruiting or merit-based recruiting. This is just going to keep going on and on and on, and we're going to have more of this stuff happening everywhere, and it's going to be frustrating. Well, everyone, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Heise Says. And if you live in New Zealand, watch out for those boards being overrun by women. Take care, and I will see you all again next time. Bye for now.